The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the dusty depot, and Rose Northwood stepped down onto the wooden planks with trembling legs, certain that every person in Fargo, North Dakota, could see straight through to the stained, broken thing she believed herself to be. It was late June of 1883, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier town that would become her refuge or her ruin. Rose clutched her worn carpetbag tighter, her knuckles white beneath the threadbare gloves she wore despite the heat. At 22 years old, she had already lived what felt like several lifetimes, each one more painful than the last. The bruises on her ribs had faded to a sickly yellow, hidden beneath the high-necked traveling dress that was far too warm for the summer weather. But Rose had learned long ago that covering up was safer than revealing anything at all. She had come to Fargo because her distant cousin Martha had written to her 6 months ago, offering her a position at the boarding house she ran with her husband. The letter had arrived at a time when Rose had been contemplating throwing herself into the Missouri River, so beaten down by her circumstances that she could see no other way out. Her stepfather's rage had grown worse after her mother's death, and the small town in Illinois where she had spent her miserable life had offered no sanctuary, no hope, no future worth living. "Miss Northwood." A woman's voice called out, and Rose turned to see a plump, kind-faced woman in her 40s hurrying toward her. "Oh, my dear, you look exhausted. I am Martha Hendricks. Welcome to Fargo." Rose managed a small smile, though it felt foreign on her face. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Hendricks. I cannot express how grateful I am for this opportunity." Martha waved her hand dismissively and took Rose's bag. "None of that formal nonsense. You will call me Martha, and we will get along just fine. Come now, the boarding house is just down the street. You must be starving after such a long journey." As they walked through the town, Rose kept her eyes downcast, a habit so ingrained she could not break it even when she tried. She noticed the wooden sidewalks, the false-fronted buildings, the saloon that was already doing brisk business despite the early hour. Cowboys and ranchers moved about their business, and women in calico dresses carried baskets and parcels. It was a typical frontier town, neither better nor worse than she had imagined. "We have 5 boarders at the moment," Martha explained as they walked. "Most of them work on the surrounding ranches. Good men, all of them, and they pay on time. You will help me with the cooking and cleaning, and I will pay you fairly, plus room and board, of course." "I will work hard," Rose said quietly. "I promise you will not regret taking me in." Martha stopped walking and turned to face her, placing a gentle hand on Rose's arm. Rose flinched instinctively, and Martha's expression softened with understanding. "My dear girl, you do not have to prove anything to me. I can see you have had a difficult time of it, and all I want is for you to feel safe here. That is all that matters." Rose felt tears prick at her eyes but blinked them back furiously. She had not allowed herself to cry in years, and she would not start now. "Thank you," she whispered. The boarding house was a large, 2-story structure painted white with green shutters. A wide porch wrapped around the front, and Rose could see a vegetable garden thriving in the side yard. It looked like something from a dream, so far removed from the dark, cramped house she had fled that it seemed impossible it could be real. Inside, Martha showed her to a small room on the 2nd floor. It was simply furnished with a narrow bed, a washstand, a chest of drawers, and a single window that looked out over the main street. To Rose, who had spent the last 5 years sleeping on a pallet in the kitchen to avoid her stepfather's late-night visits to her bedroom, it was a palace. "Rest for an hour or 2, Martha said. "We serve supper at 6 o'clock, and I could use your help then if you are feeling up to it." Rose nodded. "I will be ready." After Martha left, Rose sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to take a full breath for the first time in months. She was here. She was safe. She was far away from everything that had tried to destroy her. But even as relief washed over her, that familiar voice in her head whispered its poison. She was worthless. She was damaged. She was nothing but a burden, and soon enough, Martha would see it too. Everyone always did. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a simple work dress, and splashed water on her face. Then she made her way downstairs to help with supper preparations. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, with a massive cast iron stove and long wooden counters. Martha was already rolling out biscuit dough, and she smiled when Rose appeared. Wonderful timing. "Can you peel these potatoes for me?" Rose set to work immediately, grateful to have something to occupy her hands. They worked in companionable silence for a while, and Rose found herself relaxing slightly in Martha's presence. There was something inherently calming about the older woman, a gentleness that seemed genuine rather than false. "The boarders will be arriving soon," Martha said as she placed the biscuits in the oven. "Most of them are quiet, respectful men, but I should warn you about Kane Richardson." Rose looked up sharply, her heart beginning to race. "Warn me," Martha laughed. "Oh, nothing like that, dear. Kane is a good man, one of the best I have ever known, but he has a way about him that can be quite intense. He sees things, understands things that most people miss. Some find it unsettling." "I see," Rose said, though she did not see it all. "He is a foreman at the Running Creek Ranch about 10 miles north of here," Martha continued. "He stays here during the week and goes back to the ranch on weekends. Been coming here for 3 years now, ever since he arrived in Dakota territory. Never causes any trouble, always pays early, and he has helped my husband fix more things around this place than I can count." Rose returned to her potatoes, determined not to think too much about this Kane Richardson. She had not come here to interact with men. She had come here to hide, to work, to try to piece together some semblance of a life from the broken fragments she carried. But when the boarders began arriving for supper, she found her eyes drawn to the man who entered last. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet or more, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of someone who worked hard for a living. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck, and his face was deeply tanned from long hours in the sun. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, clear green eyes that seemed to take in everything with a single glance. Kane Richardson removed his hat as he entered the dining room, and his gaze swept over the table before landing on Rose. She immediately looked away, her cheeks flushing, but not before she saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition. Concern. She could not tell, and she did not want to know. "Gentlemen, this is my cousin Rose Northwood," Martha announced cheerfully. "She will be helping me around the boarding house from now on. I expect you all to treat her with respect and courtesy." There was a chorus of greetings and nods. Rose managed a small smile but kept her eyes fixed on the floor. She helped Martha serve the meal, moving efficiently between the kitchen and dining room, hyper-aware of Kane's presence even though he said nothing to her directly. The food was simple but hearty. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, biscuits, and green beans from the garden. The men ate with the focused attention of those who worked physically demanding jobs, and conversation was minimal. Rose was grateful for this. She had no desire to make small talk or answer questions about where she had come from or why she had come to Fargo. She was carrying a platter of biscuits back to the kitchen when she stumbled slightly on the threshold, and the platter tilted dangerously. Before she could right it, strong hands steadied her elbows, and she found herself looking up into Kane Richardson's green eyes. "Careful," he said quietly. His voice was deep and warm, with a slight drawl that spoke of time spent further south. "These floors can be tricky." Rose jerked away from his touch as if burned. "I am fine, thank you." She hurried into the kitchen, her heart pounding. She could feel his eyes on her back, could sense his confusion at her reaction. But she could not help it. Every instinct she had developed over the years screamed at her to maintain distance, to never let a man get close, to never trust the kindness that could turn to cruelty in an instant. "Are you all right, dear?" Martha asked, concern evident in her voice. "Yes, I just stumbled. I am fine." But she was not fine, and as she finished helping with the supper dishes, she could not shake the feeling that Kane Richardson had seen far too much in that brief moment of contact. Martha had been right. He did see things that others missed. And Rose could not afford to be seen. Not truly, because if anyone looked too closely, they would realize just how damaged and worthless she really was. That night, Rose lay in her narrow bed and listened to the sounds of the town settling in for the evening. Piano music drifted from the saloon down the street, and somewhere a dog barked. It was all so different from what she was used to, and yet the fear in her chest felt exactly the same. She had run halfway across the country, but she could not outrun the voice in her head that told her she would never be enough, never be worthy of kindness or love, or any of the things that other people seem to claim so easily. She finally drifted off to sleep, exhausted from travel and tension, and dreamed of green eyes that saw too much. The next morning, Rose woke before dawn, as was her habit. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs to help Martha prepare breakfast. The routine of work was comforting, something she could control when everything else felt uncertain. She fried bacon and eggs, made coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and sliced bread for toast. The boarders filtered in one by one, and Rose served them efficiently, still keeping her eyes downcast. But she was aware of Kane Richardson in a way she could not quite explain. He sat at the end of the table, reading a newspaper while he ate, and though he never spoke to her directly, she felt his attention like a physical touch. After breakfast, the men departed for their various jobs, and Rose helped Martha clean up the kitchen and prepare for the day's tasks. There was laundry to be done, rooms to be cleaned, and preparations for the noon meal to be started. Rose threw herself into the work with an intensity that made Martha laugh. "Slow down, child. We have all day." But Rose could not slow down. Working kept her mind occupied, kept the dark thoughts at bay. If she stopped moving, she would start thinking, and thinking led nowhere good. Over the next few days, Rose settled into a routine. She woke early, worked hard all day, and fell into bed exhausted each night. She spoke only when necessary, kept herself invisible as much as possible, and tried not to notice the way Kane Richardson seemed to be watching her with those perceptive green eyes. But on the fourth morning, her careful isolation was shattered. She was in the backyard, hanging laundry on the line, when she heard shouting from the street. Curious despite herself, she moved toward the front of the house and saw a young woman, perhaps 17 or 18, being dragged down the street by a large, red-faced man who was clearly drunk, despite the early hour. "You will do as I say, girl." The man bellowed, his hand clamped around the young woman's wrist. "I paid good money for that dress, and you will wear it when I tell you to wear it." The young woman was crying, trying to pull away, but the man was too strong. Rose felt ice flood her veins. She knew exactly what that felt like, knew the helplessness and fear and shame. She should look away. She should go back to her laundry. This was not her business. But then she saw Kane Richardson step out of the mercantile across the street, his eyes taking in the situation instantly. He moved with a speed that belied his size, crossing the street in long strides. "Let her go," Kane said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel that made Rose shiver. The drunk man looked up, weaving slightly. "This is none of your business, Cowboy. This is my daughter, and I will handle her as I see fit." "That may be," Kane said evenly, "but you will not handle her in the middle of the street like a piece of livestock. Let her go, and you can both discuss this somewhere private." The man's face turned even redder. "Who do you think you are, telling me what to do?" "Someone who does not like seeing women mistreated," Kane replied. "Now let her go, or I will make you let her go." There was something in Kane's tone that must have penetrated even the man's alcohol-soaked brain, because he released the girl's wrist with a shove that sent her stumbling. She immediately ran toward the mercantile, disappearing inside. The drunk man spat on the ground near Kane's boots and staggered off down the street, muttering curses. Kane watched him go, then turned and saw Rose standing on the porch of the boarding house. Their eyes met, and Rose saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Understanding. Recognition. As if he knew exactly why she had been watching, why she had been frozen in place, why she looked like she might be sick. She turned and fled into the house, her hands shaking. She heard Martha calling after her, but she could not stop. She made it to her room, closed the door, and sank down onto the bed, her breath coming in short gasps. She could not do this. She could not be here, could not let people see her, could not risk anyone figuring out her secrets. That man in the street could have been her stepfather. That girl could have been her. The only difference was that someone had intervened on the girl's behalf, and no one had ever intervened for Rose. There was a soft knock on her door. "Rose, it is Martha. May I come in?" Rose wiped her eyes and stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Yes." Martha entered, her face full of concern. "What happened out there? You looked like you had seen a ghost." "I am sorry," Rose said automatically. "I should not have left my work. I will go finish the laundry now." "The laundry can wait," Martha said firmly. She sat down on the edge of the bed and patted the space beside her. "Talk to me, dear. What frightened you so badly?" Rose remained standing, her arms wrapped around herself. "Nothing. I am fine." "You are not fine, and that is all right. You do not have to tell me everything, but I need you to know that you are safe here. Whatever happened to you before, it cannot reach you in my house." Rose felt tears threatening again and fought them back. "You are very kind, but I do not deserve your kindness. Why would you say such a thing?" Martha asked, genuinely bewildered. "Because it is true," Rose said quietly. I am not a good person. I am broken and worthless, and eventually you will see that and regret taking me in." Martha stood up and crossed the room, taking both of Rose's hands in hers. "Now you listen to me, Rose Northwood. I do not know what lies someone told you, what cruelty someone inflicted on you, but you are not worthless. You are a young woman who has survived something terrible, and that makes you strong, not broken." Rose shook her head, unable to accept the words even as part of her desperately wanted to believe them. "You do not understand." "Then help me understand," Martha said gently, but Rose could not. She could not speak the words, could not give voice to the years of abuse and degradation, could not admit to the things she believed about herself. So she simply said, "I am sorry, I need to get back to work." Martha sighed but released her hands. "All right. But Rose, if you ever want to talk, I am here. And you are safe. Please believe that." Rose nodded, though she believed nothing of the sort, and returned to her chores. But the encounter had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. And for the rest of the day she was jumpy and distracted, burning the biscuits and dropping a plate that shattered on the kitchen floor. That evening at supper, Kane Richardson was late. The other boarders had already begun eating when he finally arrived, and Rose noticed immediately that his knuckles were scraped and bruised. He caught her looking and gave her a slight nod before taking his seat. After the meal, as Rose was clearing the plates, she heard one of the other boarders ask Kane what had happened to his hand. "Had a disagreement with Tom Barnett at the saloon," Kane said casually. "He decided to go back and finish what he started with his daughter this afternoon. I decided to explain why that was a bad idea. Tom's got a mean temper when he is drinking," another boarder said. "You want to watch yourself around him." "I can handle Tom Barnett," Kane replied. "And if he lays another hand on that girl, he will be dealing with more than just me." Rose felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something she could not quite name. This man, this stranger, had defended someone who meant nothing to him. Not once, but twice in the same day. She could not fathom that kind of courage, that kind of innate decency. As she carried dishes to the kitchen, she felt Kane's eyes on her again, and this time she risked a glance in his direction. He was looking at her with an expression that was neither pity nor curiosity, but something else entirely, something that felt like respect. Over the following weeks, Rose continued her work at the boarding house, and slowly, incrementally, she began to feel slightly less terrified every moment of every day. Martha was endlessly patient with her, never pushing for information but always offering kindness. The other boarders were respectful and friendly without being intrusive. And Kane Richardson continued to be a quiet, steady presence that Rose found herself increasingly aware of. He never approached her directly, never tried to engage her in conversation beyond basic pleasantries, but he found small ways to make her life easier. He fixed the back door that had been sticking, making it easier for her to carry laundry outside. He brought in extra firewood without being asked, stacking it neatly by the stove. He complimented Martha's cooking in a way that made it clear he knew Rose did half the work. And he watched her, not in a way that made her feel threatened or uncomfortable, but in a way that suggested he was trying to understand her, to figure out the puzzle she represented. One morning in late July, Rose was in the garden picking vegetables when she heard footsteps behind her. She tensed automatically, but when she turned, she saw it was Kane holding his hat in his hands. "Sorry to startle you," he said. "I wanted to catch you before I left for the ranch." Rose stood up, brushing dirt from her skirt. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing wrong. I just wanted to tell you that I have seen how hard you work, and I think Martha is lucky to have you here." Rose felt heat rush to her cheeks. "I am the lucky one. She gave me a position when I had nothing." Kane tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" "Diminish yourself. Every compliment you turn it around or push it away. Why?" Rose looked down at the basket of vegetables at her feet. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do," Kane said gently. "But you do not have to tell me. I just wanted you to know that I see you, Rose. Not whatever you think you are, but who you actually are. And what I see is someone worth knowing." Before Rose could respond, he put his hat back on, tipped it to her, and walked away, leaving her standing in the garden with her heart pounding and her mind reeling. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever suggested that she might be worth knowing. It was incomprehensible, impossible, and yet some tiny part of her wanted desperately to believe it. Over the next few weeks, Kane continued his quiet campaign of proving to Rose that she had value. He never did anything obvious or overwhelming, but the small gestures accumulated. He brought her a book from town, saying he thought she might enjoy it. He insisted on carrying heavy buckets of water for her. He engaged her in brief conversations about the weather, the town, harmless topics that required nothing from her but a few words in response. And slowly, imperceptibly, Rose began to relax around him. She still flinched when anyone moved too quickly near her, still kept her eyes downcast most of the time, but with Kane, She found herself occasionally looking up, occasionally offering a small smile, occasionally volunteering a thought or opinion. Martha noticed the change and approved. "Kane is a good man," she told Rose one afternoon as they were preparing supper. "One of the best I have known. His father was a rancher down in Texas, and Kane grew up working cattle. But there was some kind of trouble a few years back, and he came north to make a fresh start. He does not talk about it much, but I gather it was not easy." Rose felt a kinship with that information. Someone else running from a painful past, someone else trying to build something new from the ruins of what came before. That evening, after the supper dishes were washed and put away, Rose stepped out onto the back porch to get some air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the heat of the day was finally beginning to ease. She stood there, breathing deeply, when she heard the back door open behind her. "Beautiful evening," Kane said, coming to stand beside her at the porch railing. He maintained a respectful distance, never crowding her space. "Yes," Rose agreed. "I love this time of day. Everything feels peaceful." "You deserve peace," Kane said quietly. "I hope you are finding some of it here." Rose glanced at him, surprised by the earnestness in his tone. "Why do you care?" Kane was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the horizon. "Because I know what it is like to believe you are not worth anything. I know what it is like to carry shame and guilt that does not even belong to you. And I know how hard it is to accept that maybe, just maybe, you deserve better than what you have been taught to expect." Rose felt something crack inside her chest, some carefully constructed wall beginning to crumble. "What happened to you?" Kane smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I was engaged once, back in Texas. Her name was Elizabeth, and I thought we would build a life together. But her father ran up gambling debts, serious ones, and when he could not pay, the men he owed came to collect. They burned down his ranch, and Elizabeth was inside the house." Rose gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh God, Kane, I am so sorry." "I was out with the cattle when it happened," Kane continued, his voice rough with old pain. "I saw the smoke, but by the time I got there, it was too late. And for a long time I believed it was my fault, that if I had been there I could have saved her. That I failed in the most fundamental way a man can fail. But it was not your fault," Rose said urgently. "You could not have known what would happen." Kane turned to look at her, and his green eyes were intense. "No, it was not my fault, but it took me a long time to understand that. Just like whatever happened to you, Rose, it was not your fault. Whatever lies you have been told about yourself, whatever cruelty you have endured, none of it was your fault, and none of it defines your worth." Rose felt tears spill down her cheeks before she could stop them. "You do not know what I have done, what I have been. I know that you are here, working hard every day, treating everyone with kindness even though kindness was not shown to you. I know that you are brave enough to keep going even when you believe you are worthless. And I know that you are wrong about yourself." "How can you possibly know that?" Rose asked, her voice breaking. Kane reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Because I see you, Rose Northwood, and what I see is someone extraordinary." Rose could not speak. She could only stand there, shaking, as years of carefully suppressed emotion threatened to overwhelm her. Kane did not push, did not demand anything from her. He simply stood beside her, a solid, steady presence, until she finally managed to collect herself. "I should go inside," she whispered. "All right," Kane said. "But Rose, think about what I said. You are worth so much more than you believe." That night, Rose lay in bed and replayed the conversation over and over in her mind. Kane had shared something deeply painful with her, had made himself vulnerable, and had done it to help her see that she was not alone in her struggle. It was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for her, and she had no idea how to process it. Over the following days, she found herself watching Kane more openly, trying to reconcile this gentle, thoughtful man with her lifetime of experience with men who were cruel and violent. He never raised his voice, never showed aggression toward anyone who did not deserve it, and treated everyone from the youngest child in town to the oldest widow with equal respect. And he continued to prove to Rose that she had value. When she mentioned in passing that she missed reading, he brought her books from the small lending library in town. When she struggled to reach something on a high shelf, he built her a step stool. When she burned her hand on the stove, he insisted on treating it with salve, his touch so gentle she barely felt it. Each small act of kindness chipped away at the armor Rose had built around herself, and she found herself beginning to believe, just a little, that maybe Kane was right. Maybe she was not worthless. Maybe she did deserve kindness and respect, and all the things she had thought were forever beyond her reach. One afternoon in mid-August, Martha asked Rose to take a basket of food to a family on the edge of town. The wife had just given birth to her fourth child, and Martha wanted to help out with meals for a few days. Rose agreed readily, grateful for a reason to get out of the house for a bit. She was walking back through town, the empty basket swinging at her side, when she heard a commotion coming from the alley behind the general store. Against her better judgment, she moved closer and saw 3 men surrounding a fourth, who was backed against the wall. The 3 men were clearly intent on violence, and Rose recognized one of them as Tom Barnett, the drunk who had been dragging his daughter through the street weeks ago. The man against the wall was Kane Richardson. Rose's blood ran cold. "Stop!" she shouted before she could think better of it. "Leave him alone." The 3 men turned to look at her, and Tom Barnett laughed. "Well, well, Richardson's little mouse. Come to watch your man get what he deserves." "He is not my man," Rose said, though her voice shook, "and he has not done anything to deserve this." "He broke my nose and 2 of my ribs," Barnett snarled. "That deserves a reckoning." "You were beating your daughter," Kane said calmly, though Rose could see blood on his lip. "You deserved worse than what I gave you." Barnett took a step toward Rose, and she fought every instinct to run. "You need to learn to mind your own business, girl. Both of you do." "Actually," a new voice said from the mouth of the alley, "I think the 3 of you need to learn to pick on someone your own size." Rose turned to see 2 men she recognized as other boarders from Martha's house, both of them large and capable-looking. They moved to stand beside Rose, their posture making it clear they were prepared to fight if necessary. The odds had shifted, and Barnett was smart enough to recognize it. He spat on the ground and gestured to his companions. "This is not over, Richardson." "Yes, it is," Kane said firmly. "Touch your daughter again, and I will make sure you are run out of this town. Touch me again, and I will put you in the ground. Touch Rose, and there will not be enough left of you to bury." The menace in Kane's voice was unmistakable, and even Barnett seemed to sense he had pushed as far as he could. The 3 men slunk away, leaving Kane, Rose, and the 2 boarders alone in the alley. "You all right, Kane?" one of the boarders asked. "I am fine, thanks to you, and thanks to Rose for raising the alarm." Rose felt her knees go weak now that the danger had passed. "I did not do anything." Kane crossed the alley to stand in front of her, his green eyes intense. "You risked yourself to help me." "That was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish, and I do not know whether to thank you or lecture you." "I could not just walk away," Rose said. "Not after everything you have done for me." "What I have done for you is just basic human decency," Kane said. "But what you did just now, standing up to 3 men when you were terrified, that was extraordinary." Rose shook her head. "I do not feel extraordinary. I feel like I am going to be sick." Kane smiled gently and took her hand, the first time he had initiated such contact. "Come on. Let us get you back to the boarding house and make sure Martha does not send out a search party." They walked back together, Kane still holding her hand, and Rose found that she did not want to pull away. His palm was warm and calloused, and holding it made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. When they reached the boarding house, Martha took one look at Kane's split lip and Rose's pale face and ushered them both inside. She insisted on cleaning Kane's wounds while Rose made tea, and by the time everything was settled, Rose found herself sitting at the kitchen table across from Kane, both of them nursing cups of strong tea while Martha hovered nearby. "This has gone far enough," Martha said firmly. "I am going to speak to the sheriff about Tom Barnett. That man is a menace and someone needs to do something before he seriously hurts someone." "I agree," Kane said, "but Martha, you need to understand that Barnett might retaliate." "Let him try," Martha said fiercely. "I am not afraid of him, and besides, most of the town knows he is trouble. If we all stand together, he cannot touch us." Rose listened to this exchange and marveled at the courage of these people. Where she came from, everyone had known what her stepfather was doing to her, and no one had done anything to stop it. But here, in this rough frontier town, people were willing to stand up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. That night, Rose could not sleep. She kept replaying the scene in the alley, kept hearing Kane's voice when he said that if anyone touched her, there would not be enough left of them to bury. He had said it with such conviction, such protective ferocity, and Rose could not understand why. Why would he care so much about protecting her? What had she done to deserve such loyalty? The next morning, Kane did not go to the ranch as he usually did on Saturdays. Instead, he stayed in town, and Rose gradually realized he was staying to make sure Barnett did not cause any more trouble. He spent the day doing odd jobs around the boarding house, fixing a loose step on the front porch, repairing a broken shutter, helping Martha's husband with the roof that had been leaking in one corner. Rose watched him work, admiring the easy competence with which he moved, the way his muscles flexed beneath his shirt as he hammered nails or sawed wood. She had never allowed herself to think of a man in such terms before, but with Kane, she could not help it. He was beautiful in a rugged, masculine way, but more than that, he was kind. And kindness, Rose was learning, was the most attractive quality of all. In the late afternoon, Kane found Rose in the garden again, this time weeding between the rows of vegetables. He crouched down beside her, not saying anything, just joining her in the work. They labored in companionable silence for a while, and Rose found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. "Can I ask you something?" Kane said finally. Rose glanced at him. "Of course." "Why did you really come to Fargo? What were you running from?" Rose's hands stilled in the dirt. She had known this question would come eventually, but she still was not prepared for it. "I do not like to talk about it." "I know," Kane said gently. "But Rose, carrying all that pain alone is going to destroy you. Sometimes sharing the burden makes it lighter." Rose sat back on her heels, looking at her dirt-stained hands. Could she tell him? Could she put into words the nightmare she had lived through? She had never told anyone, not even Martha, but Kane had shared his pain with her. He had been vulnerable and honest, and maybe she owed him the same. "My mother died when I was 17, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. She had been sick for a long time, and it was almost a relief when she finally went. But it left me alone with my stepfather." Kane did not say anything, just waited for her to continue. "He had always been cruel, but after my mother died, it got worse. He drank heavily, and when he drank, he got violent. He would hit me for the smallest things and sometimes for no reason at all, and then he started." Rose's voice broke, and she could not continue. Kane moved closer, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. You do not have to say it. I understand. Rose felt tears streaming down her face. I tried to fight him off, but he was so much stronger. I tried to leave, but I had no money, nowhere to go. The people in our town knew what was happening, but no one would help me. They said it was family business, that I probably deserved it, that I was making it all up for attention. They were wrong, Kane said fiercely. They were all wrong, and they failed you in the worst possible way. I started to believe them, Rose continued. I started to believe that maybe I did deserve it, that maybe I was worthless and broken and good for nothing. And then Martha's letter arrived, and I knew it was my only chance. I stole money from my stepfather's wallet while he was passed out drunk, bought a ticket on the first stagecoach heading west, and I never looked back. Kane did take her hand then, holding it gently but firmly. You are one of the bravest people I have ever met. To survive all that and still be kind, still be gentle, still be you, that takes strength most people cannot even imagine. Rose looked up at him through her tears. I do not feel strong. I feel broken. You are not broken, Kane said. You are healing. And healing is hard and painful and takes time, but Rose, I promise you, you are worth the effort. You are worth so much more than what was done to you. Rose wanted to believe him. She wanted it so desperately it hurt. But a lifetime of being told she was worthless could not be erased by a few kind words, no matter how much she wanted them to be true. As if reading her thoughts, Kane said, I know you do not believe me yet, but I am going to keep telling you until you do. Every single day, Rose, I am going to prove to you that you are worthy of kindness and respect and love. Every single day. And he did. Over the following weeks, Kane made good on his promise. Every morning before he left for the ranch, he found Rose and told her something he appreciated about her. Her kindness, her work ethic, her smile, her intelligence. He brought her small gifts, nothing extravagant but thoughtful, a ribbon the color of her eyes, a smooth stone he found by the river, a wildflower he picked on his way into town. He engaged her in conversations, asking her opinions on everything from politics to poetry, and he listened to her answers as if they mattered. He defended her when one of the other boarders made a thoughtless comment. He sat with her on the back porch in the evenings and talked about his day, his dreams, his fears. And slowly, incrementally, Rose began to change. She started looking people in the eye when she spoke to them. She offered her own thoughts and opinions without being asked. She laughed more, a sound that delighted Martha and seemed to make Kane's entire face light up. She also began to realize that what she felt for Kane went far beyond gratitude. She was falling in love with him, and the realization terrified her. She had never imagined she could feel this way about anyone, never thought she was capable of the kind of trust and vulnerability that love required. But Kane had proven himself time and again, and she found herself wanting to believe in the possibility of a future that included him. One evening in early September, Kane asked if she would take a walk with him after supper. Rose agreed, her heart pounding, and they strolled through the town as the sun set, painting everything in gold and amber light. I need to tell you something, Kane said as they walked. And I want you to know that there is no pressure, no expectation. I just need you to know how I feel. Rose felt her pulse quicken. All right. Kane stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Rose, from the moment I first saw you, I knew there was something special about you, and the more I have gotten to know you, the more certain I have become. I am falling in love with you. Actually, I think I am already there. And I know you have been through hell, and I know you are still healing, but I wanted you to know that I am here. I am not going anywhere, and whenever you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would be honored to court you properly. Rose stared at him, unable to speak. This man, this wonderful, kind, incredible man, was in love with her. With her, Rose Northwood, who had believed for so long that she was unlovable, unworthy, damaged beyond repair. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "You do not have to say anything," Kane assured her. "I just wanted you to know. Take all the time you need to think about it. There is no rush." But Rose did not need time. She had been thinking about little else for weeks now, and she knew what she wanted. "Kane, I am falling in love with you too. I am terrified, and I do not know if I will be any good at this, but I want to try. If you are willing to be patient with me." Kane's smile was brighter than the setting sun. "Rose, I would wait a lifetime for you." He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. It was chaste and sweet and perfect, and Rose felt something inside her chest expand, filling spaces she had not even known were empty. They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, and when they arrived, Martha took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly. "It is about time," she said, her eyes twinkling. Over the following months, Kane courted Rose with a patience and gentleness that continued to amaze her. He took her on picnics by the river, on walks through the countryside, on visits to the small towns surrounding Fargo. He introduced her to the ranchers he worked with, making it clear that she was important to him and deserved their respect. He never pushed her physically, always letting her set the pace. Their kisses remained chaste, though Rose found herself wanting more, wanting to explore this new facet of herself that had been so damaged by her past. But Kane seemed to understand without being told that she needed to reclaim her own body, her own desires, on her own terms and in her own time. He also helped her work through the lingering trauma from her past. When she had nightmares, which was often, he sat with her on the back porch and talked her through them. When she flinched at sudden movements, he slowed down, became more deliberate in his actions. When she struggled with the voice in her head that told her she was worthless, he patiently contradicted it with evidence of her worth. By November, Rose could barely remember the broken, terrified young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in June. She was not fully healed, might never be fully healed, but she was stronger. She was happier. She was beginning to believe that she deserved good things. One cold evening, as the first snow of the season began to fall, Kane asked Rose to marry him. They were sitting on the back porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the snowflakes drift down from the dark sky. Kane had been quiet all evening, and Rose had sensed something was on his mind. "Rose," he said finally, "I know we have not been courting for very long, but I also know what I want. I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you every single day that you are worthy of love. I want to build a home with you, raise children with you if you want them, grow old with you. I want to wake up every morning and see your face. I want to be the man who makes you smile, who holds you when you are sad, who stands beside you through whatever life brings. Rose Northwood, will you marry me?" Rose looked at this man who had changed her life so completely, who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway, who had been patient and kind and steady even when she had been terrified and broken. And she knew, with a certainty that surprised her, that she wanted everything he was offering. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, I will marry you." Kane pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a real kiss this time, deep and passionate and full of promise. And Rose kissed him back, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into that moment, claiming her future with both hands. They were married in late November in a small ceremony at the church in Fargo, with Martha and her husband standing as witnesses. Rose wore a simple dress of blue calico that Martha had helped her sew, and Kane wore his best suit. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Rose felt as if her entire life had been leading to this moment. Kane had saved enough money to buy a small house on the edge of town, close enough to the Running Creek Ranch that he could ride there daily, but far enough from the center of Fargo to provide some privacy. It was a modest 2-room structure with a stone fireplace, a good roof, and a small plot of land perfect for a garden. To Rose, it was paradise. Their wedding night was gentle and patient, with Kane taking the time to make sure Rose felt safe and loved every moment. He was attentive to her responses, never pushing beyond what she was comfortable with, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, Rose felt a sense of completion she had never imagined possible. "I love you," she whispered in the darkness, her head resting on his chest. "I love you too," Kane replied, his arms tightening around her. "And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again." And he did. The first winter of their marriage was cold and harsh, with blizzards that kept them snowed in for days at a time. But Rose found that she did not mind. Being cooped up in their small house with Kane was not a hardship but a joy. They talked for hours, played cards, read books aloud to each other, and made love with an increasing passion and familiarity that left Rose breathless. Kane continued to work at the Running Creek Ranch, and Rose took on sewing and mending work for the women in town, earning money that she carefully saved in a jar in the kitchen. She was determined to contribute to their household, to prove that she was a partner and not a burden. But more than that, she was simply happy. She woke each morning excited to start the day, eager to see what small joy Kane would bring her. Sometimes it was a compliment. Sometimes it was a flower he had picked. Sometimes it was just the way he looked at her over breakfast, as if she were the most precious thing in the world in the spring. Rose realized she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, worried that she would not be a good mother, that she would somehow pass on the damage that had been done to her. But Kane was overjoyed, and his excitement was infectious. "You are going to be an amazing mother," he told her, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child is so lucky to have you." Rose wanted to believe him, and as the months passed and her belly grew, she found that she did. She prepared for the baby with a mix of trepidation and excitement, sewing tiny clothes, setting up a cradle that Kane built with his own hands, dreaming of the future they would give this child. In October of 1884, Rose gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long and difficult, but Martha was there to help, and when Rose finally held her son in her arms, she felt a love so overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes. "What should we name him?" Kane asked, looking down at his son with wonder. Rose thought for a moment, then smiled. "James. James Richardson. It means supplanter, one who replaces. He is replacing all the pain of the past with hope for the future." Kane kissed her forehead. "James it is." Their son was a happy, healthy baby, and Rose found that motherhood came more naturally to her than she had feared. She was fiercely protective of James, determined to give him the childhood she had never had, filled with love and safety and encouragement. Kane was a devoted father, helping with late-night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending every free moment playing with his son. Watching him with James, Rose fell even more deeply in love with her husband, marveling at the gentleness and patience he showed. When James was 6 months old, Kane came home one evening with news. The owner of the Running Creek Ranch was getting older and wanted to sell. Kane had been saving money for years, and combined with what Rose had earned from her sewing, they had enough for a down payment on a portion of the land and a small herd of cattle. "It is a risk," Kane said. "Starting our own ranch is going to be hard work, and there is no guarantee we will succeed. But Rose, I think we can do this. I think we can build something real, something lasting for James and for any other children we might have." Rose did not hesitate. "Let us do it." They bought 200 acres of good grazing land north of Fargo, along with 50 head of cattle and 2 horses. Kane built them a larger house, a real ranch house with 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a front porch that looked out over the rolling prairie. Rose planted a large garden, expanded her sewing business, and helped Kane with the ranch work whenever she could. It was hard, exhausting labor, and there were times when Rose wondered if they had been too ambitious. But Kane never let her doubt for long. He reminded her constantly of how far they had come, how much they had accomplished, how proud he was of her. "You are the strongest woman I know," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset while James played at their feet. "You survived hell and now you are building a paradise. Never forget how incredible you are." Rose smiled and took his hand. "I could not have done any of this without you. You saved me, Kane." Kane shook his head. "No, Rose, you saved yourself. I just reminded you of what was already there." 2 years later, Rose gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Lily. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's green eyes, and she was every bit as loved and cherished as her brother. James, now a toddler, was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything from diaper changes to bath time. The ranch prospered over the years. Kane proved to be an excellent cattleman, and Rose's sewing business grew to the point where she was training 2 younger women in town to help with the orders. They added more land, more cattle, and eventually 2 more children, a son named Thomas and another daughter named Emma. Their home was filled with laughter and love, and Rose often found herself pausing in the middle of some task just to marvel at the life she had built. There were still hard days, days when the trauma of her past crept back in, days when she struggled with feelings of inadequacy or fear. But Kane was always there, steady and patient, reminding her of her worth, proving his love in 1,000 small ways. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Kane took Rose on a trip to the spot where he had first told her he loved her. It was a beautiful September evening, the air crisp and cool, the sky painted in brilliant colors. "I have been thinking about that night a lot lately," Kane said as they stood together, watching the sun set. "How terrified I was that you would reject me, how certain I was that I had to tell you anyway because you needed to know how loved you were." Rose leaned into his side, his arm coming around her automatically. "I was so scared. I wanted to believe you, but I did not know how. And now?" Kane asked. Rose turned to look up at him, and her smile was radiant. "Now I believe it every single day. You have proven it to me in every possible way, Kane. You have shown me that I am worthy of love, of respect, of happiness. You have given me a life I never dreamed possible. I am not that broken girl anymore." "You were never broken," Kane said firmly. "You were wounded, but you were always whole, always valuable. I just helped you see it." Rose stood on her toes and kissed him, pouring a decade of love and gratitude into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, she said, "Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for proving my worth every single day." "It has been my honor," Kane replied, "and I am going to keep doing it for the rest of our lives." And he did. Through good years and hard years, through sickness and health, through the joys of watching their children grow, and the challenges of building a legacy, Kane Richardson proved to Rose Northwood Richardson every single day that she was worthy of love. And Rose, in turn, proved to him that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that hope could flourish in the most barren soil, that 2 broken people could build something beautiful together. Their ranch, which they named the Worthwhile Ranch in honor of their journey, became one of the most successful in Dakota territory. But more than that, it became a haven for others who had been broken by life. Over the years, they took in several young women who needed a safe place to heal, offering them work and shelter and the same patient kindness that had saved Rose. One of these young women was Tom Barnett's daughter, Sarah, who finally found the courage to leave her father when she was 19. Rose and Kane gave her a place to live, taught her to read and write, and helped her find work as a teacher in Fargo. Years later, Sarah married a kind young rancher and often told people that Rose and Kane Richardson had saved her life. As Rose approached her 40th birthday, she looked back on the journey that had brought her to this moment and marveled at the transformation. The terrified, broken young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach in 1883 was gone, replaced by a confident, capable, deeply loved wife and mother who knew her own worth. She still had the occasional nightmare, still struggled sometimes with the lingering effects of trauma, but she had learned to be gentle with herself, to acknowledge the pain without letting it define her. And she had Kane, who never wavered in his support, who proved his love to her every single day in ways both grand and small. Their children grew up strong and healthy, secure in the knowledge that they were loved unconditionally. James took over much of the ranch work as he grew older, showing the same steady temperament as his father. Lily became a skilled horsewoman and eventually trained horses for ranches across the territory. Thomas showed a talent for numbers and handled the ranch's business affairs. And Emma, their youngest, became a teacher like Sarah, dedicated to helping children learn and grow. On Rose and Kane's 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. Friends and neighbors came from miles around to celebrate with them. And as Rose looked around at the life they had built, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That evening, after the guests had departed and their children had gone to bed, Rose and Kane sat together on the front porch, just as they had done countless times over the years. "You remember what you said to me that first time we sat out here together?" Kane asked, his hand holding hers. Rose smiled. "I said I loved this time of day because everything feels peaceful. And I said you deserved peace," Kane continued. "Do you feel like you have found it?" Rose was quiet for a moment, considering. "Yes," she said finally, "not just peace but joy, fulfillment, love. Everything I thought was impossible, you made possible. You proved to me every single day that I was worthy, and eventually I started to believe it." Kane lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You always were worthy, Rose. I am just glad I was there to remind you." "I love you," Rose said, the words as true and powerful as they had been the first time she had spoken them. "I love you too," Kane replied. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that, for the rest of our lives." And as they sat together in the gathering twilight, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Dakota sky, Rose Northwood Richardson knew without a doubt that she had found exactly what she had been searching for all those years ago, even when she had not known what it was. She had found home. She had found love. She had found herself. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Kane and Rose grew older together, their love deepening with time rather than fading. They became grandparents, marveling at the next generation of Richardsons who would carry on the legacy they had built. When Rose was 52, she attended the wedding of their oldest son James to a wonderful young woman from a neighboring ranch. As she watched them exchange vows, she was struck by how different this wedding was from her own. James and his bride were so young and full of hope, unburdened by trauma or pain. They were starting their marriage from a place of wholeness rather than brokenness, and Rose realized that this was perhaps the greatest gift she and Kane had given their children. a foundation of love and security that allowed them to enter their own relationships healthy and whole. "What are you thinking about?" Kane asked, coming to stand beside her. "I am thinking about how lucky we are," Rose said. "How lucky our children are. We broke the cycle, Kane. Whatever damage was done to me, we did not pass it on." Kane put his arm around her waist. "That is all you, Rose. You chose to heal, chose to be different, chose to love our children the way you should have been loved. I am so proud of you." Rose leaned into his embrace, still finding comfort and safety in his touch after all these years. "I could not have done it without you. We did it together," Kane said. That is what partnership means. As the years advanced, Kane and Rose gradually handed over more of the ranch operations to James and Thomas, though they remained involved in the day-to-day life of the worthwhile ranch. They spent their days working in the garden, caring for their grandchildren, and simply enjoying each other's company. On quiet evenings, they still sat on the front porch, holding hands and watching the sun set over the prairie. They talked about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silence that comes from decades of shared life. They reminisced about the early days, laughed about the mistakes they had made, and marveled at how far they had come. "You ever regret it?" Rose asked one evening when she was 63. "Taking on a broken woman with so much baggage, your life would have been easier if you had chosen someone else." Kane turned to look at her, his green eyes still as clear and intense as they had been 30 years ago. "Rose Richardson, you listen to me. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You are not and have never been a burden, you are a gift. And I would choose you again, 1,000 times over, in every lifetime." Rose felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Kane said. "And I am going to keep proving it to you every single day for as long as I live." And he did, until the very end. Kane Richardson passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72 with Rose holding his hand. It was a cold February night in 1908, and Rose woke to find that her husband, her partner, her love had slipped away sometime in the darkness. The grief was overwhelming, but even in her sorrow, Rose found comfort in the life they had built together. Kane had proven his love to her every single day for more than 30 years, and the evidence of that love surrounded her. Their children and grandchildren, the successful ranch, the home they had made, the countless lives they had touched. At Kane's funeral, Rose stood before the gathered crowd and spoke about the man she had loved. "Kane Richardson was the kindest man I ever knew," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "He took a broken, frightened young woman and proved to her every single day that she was worthy of love. He never wavered, never gave up, never stopped believing in me, even when I could not believe in myself. He taught me that love is not just words but actions, not just feelings but choices made every single day. And he showed me that it is never too late to heal, to change, to become who you were always meant to be. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life, but I will also be grateful every day that I was lucky enough to be his wife." Rose lived for another 15 years after Kane's death, and she spent that time honoring his memory by continuing the work they had started together. She kept helping young women who needed a safe place to heal. She spent time with her children and grandchildren, and even lived to see her great-grandchildren. She maintained the ranch with the help of her sons, ensuring that the worthwhile ranch would continue for generations to come. And every evening, she sat on the front porch and watched the sun set, remembering the man who had loved her so completely, who had proven her worth every single day, who had changed her life in ways she could never fully express. Rose Northwood Richardson died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 84, surrounded by her family. Her last words were about Kane, about how she could not wait to see him again, about how grateful she was for every moment they had shared. At her funeral, her oldest granddaughter read a letter that Rose had written years before, to be opened after her death. To my beloved children, grandchildren, and all who come after. I write this so that you will know my story and understand the legacy that Kane and I worked so hard to build. I arrived in Fargo, North Dakota in 1883 believing I was unworthy of love, broken beyond repair, good for nothing. But a cowboy named Kane Richardson proved my worth to me every single day until I finally believed it myself. He taught me that love heals, that kindness matters, that every person has inherent value regardless of what has been done to them. This ranch, this family, this life we built together, it all started because one man refused to accept the lies I believed about myself. He saw me, truly saw me, and loved what he saw. That is the legacy I want to pass on to you. See people. Love them. Prove to them every single day that they are worthy. That is how you change the world, one person, one day, one small act of kindness at a time. I lived a long and happy life, far beyond anything I imagined possible when I was young. And it all started the day a cowboy with green eyes decided I was worth saving. I love you all, and I am so proud of the family we have become. The letter was preserved and passed down through generations of Richardsons, a reminder of where they had come from and the values their matriarch and patriarch had held dear. The worthwhile ranch continued to operate for more than 100 years, and it maintained Rose and Kane's tradition of offering sanctuary to those who needed it. Their story became a legend in Fargo, a testament to the transformative power of love and the importance of proving to people every single day that they matter. And though the years passed and the world changed beyond recognition, the truth at the heart of Rose and Kane's story remained eternal. Everyone deserves to know their worth, and sometimes it takes just one person, proving it every single day, to change a life forever. In the small cemetery on the outskirts of Fargo, two headstones stand side by side. One reads, Kane Richardson, 1856–1908, beloved husband, father, and friend. He proved love through action. The other reads, Rose Northwood Richardson, 1861–1945, beloved wife, mother, and inspiration. She learned her worth and taught it to others. Between the headstones, their descendants planted a rose bush that blooms every spring, a living symbol of the love that flourished between a broken woman and the cowboy who proved her worth every single day, until she finally believed it herself.